Hey, what's good everyone? OJ here. Welcome to something a little bit different where we're going to be having a new weekly show where it goes over the best Nintendo news for the week and of course some RPG stuff as well. Don't know what the name is going to be, Week of Nintendo or Weekly Nintendo Review or something like that, but we're going to figure all of that out as we go along. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section about the show. Everything's going to be split up by timestamps as well, so you can look and kind of find where you want to go in the show. But let's go ahead and start out with the biggest news for this past week, and that is Shiver Entertainment has been acquisition from Nintendo, which was very surprising for many, but we're going to jump into exactly what Shiver is going to be doing for Nintendo. So Nintendo has entered into an agreement with Embracer Group, you guys all know and love them, right, to acquire 100% of the outstanding shares of Miami-based game developer Shiver Entertainment, Nintendo has announced. But what is the deal with them? What is Nintendo going to do? Well, here it is. Shiver is a video game development company that develops software for multiple platforms, including Nintendo Switch, reads the press release. Since its establishment in 2012, Shiver has partnered with publishers and developers through commissions for large-scale title developments, and recently has worked on porting development software titles such as Hogwarts Legacy and Mortal Kombat 1 for the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo will acquire 100% of the outstanding shares of Shiver and make it a wholly owned subsidiary. By welcoming Shiver's experience and accomplished development team, Nintendo aims to secure high-level resources for porting and developing software titles. Going forward, even after it becomes part of the Nintendo Group, Shiver's focus will remain the same: continue commissions that port and develop software for multiple platforms, including Nintendo Switch. The acquisition will be completed pending satisfaction of all relevant customary closing conditions, which it should be. Nintendo probably bought them for about $5 and a bag of chips. No, I'm joking with that, but I'm pretty sure they were really cheap, because usually what makes you more expensive is if you actually have value in what you own. Shiver doesn't really own anything. They're essentially a porting studio at this point, used to do mobile games before that, but they really learned how to port things over to the Nintendo Switch. Now, some things that I saw quite a bit were people saying, wait a minute, this team sucks. They're not as good. Look at Mortal Kombat 1. Look at Hogwarts Legacy. They don't know what they're doing. But I would say, wait a minute, hold up here. I would think based off of the Nintendo Switch hardware and based off of the time they were probably given, being able to get games that are only on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series, or essentially games that were built for PS5 and Xbox Series, and getting them functioning on the Nintendo Switch, patching them and actually having them playable in a form is a really unique skill set. You can't get a lot of people to do that, and even if you look at what they did with Mortal Kombat 11, that was pretty good on the Nintendo Switch. So the Switch is not this system that can essentially handle big PlayStation 5 games like Hogwarts, even though it's on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but that came after the PS5 and Xbox Series version. That is really more of a PS5, Xbox Series game. So they were able to get Hogwarts on the Nintendo Switch and working good enough, and people are actually picking it up. Mortal Kombat 1 has finally gotten some other updates and patches at this point, which some outlets aren't really covering at all, but it's got some patches and updates to make it better. Now, it's still, could it be better? Absolutely. It's not like Mortal Kombat 1 was some outstanding success, but I think what Nintendo saw is the fact that they were able to get games that were built specifically for PS5 and Xbox Series on the Nintendo Switch, operational and running. Now, if you give them a Nintendo Switch 2 with more resources, time, and Nintendo's own first-party engineers and development resources, that's going to take them to the next level, because I did see people saying they should have bought Panic Button or something else like that, but we don't know Panic Button situation. We don't know if they're even up for sale. We don't know all sorts of stuff. And once again, I haven't really heard too much from Panic Button lately on the Nintendo Switch front, but these guys over here with Hogwarts Legacy and with Mortal Kombat 1 have done a admirable job with the hardware that they do have, and they have patched things up. So I do feel that it's going to be a good acquisition going forward, because you're going to need to have developers and resources for some of these big third-party games, and I think that they can help out with other titles as well, or if a third-party developer needs help or needs porting resources, Nintendo will have that. So I think it's a good call. Based on every single industry analyst that I've seen so far talk about this, they all think it's a good call, considering that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have more complex development. Things are going to intensify a bit, so it makes sense that Nintendo would acquire Shiver. Now let's move on to the next topic here, guys, and that's going to be talking about Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door reviews. I've been playing the game myself. I will have a sponsored video set up for you guys very soon here, but so far so good based off what I've seen. But I do want to talk about the reviews because this is a very unique and rare game when it comes to a remake or re-release. It's kind of somewhere in between there. There's some stuff that's kind of remastered or ported over, but a lot of the game, the majority of the game, is completely remade from scratch. New models, shaders, graphics, lighting, all sorts of good stuff. So essentially it does seem more like a remake based off of the Digital Foundry analysis. But the review scores are interesting because this game has an 88 average on Metacritic right now. That is a point above the original release 20 years ago on the GameCube. Now, one thing that we usually see with re-releases, remakes, is that it's hard for the game that's coming out new to actually beat out the score that it got beforehand. And this game has actually done it. Now, it was as high as 91 Metacritic. It had that label, and then it dipped down to a 90, then it dipped down to an 89, and that's where my video came into play when I talked about it on this channel. But now that I looked at it recently, it's at an 88, which is still a really good score. It's a fantastic RPG. I've been playing it right now, and I don't understand why they went away from this formula. I mean, I do understand why, because they've talked about how not wanting to have a redundancy with the Mario and Luigi series plus the Paper Mario series. But man, the gameplay is so good. There's a lot of hidden depth. It's great, and that's the reason why it's got this 88 plus average on here. So that's really good. The game's reviewing incredibly well, and I think that these 6th generation games, I've talked about this before, they need to remaster, remake, bring back a lot of them, because these games might have a few things that are out of date here and there, but for the most part, 6th gen games, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, are built so well. It's before the microtransaction era, and it's after the rough era of just getting used to 3D with the 5th generation with PS1 and N64. So it's essentially like they mastered 3D in that era, and then the PS3 and 360 era, that's when things to me went a little awry with some of the frame rates and with some of the practices when it comes to the digital stuff. 8th gen obviously was out of control at this point, but I do feel that 6th gen games are so great, and that's why Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, even running at half the frame rate, it was 60 frames on the GameCube and it's 30 frames on the Nintendo Switch, but they did such a great job with the input latency, with the graphics, with the look of the game, with the response timing, that you can play and adjust to it. Still would have liked it to be 60, and I think that if it was, it'd probably have a 90 plus Metacritic. It might be a little bit higher because there were a number of reviewers that pointed that out, but for what they've done with the look of the game, making it look more like cardboard, like a thick feel, which many of the reviews pointed out, and I've seen in my own gameplay, I think that it's really good, and it's locked in there at 30. No dips, no problems whatsoever at all. So I do think that you're going to get a balanced experience when it comes to visually and of course gameplay without having any improper frame pacing or anything like that. So I think the reviews reflect all of the good and the bad with the game. So what do you guys think about the reviews for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door? Glad to see that the game is out and people are enjoyed at this point. But we are going to move on to the next topic here, and we're going to be discussing a big rumor from Midori, who's gotten so many things right and is blown up in popularity online due to her accuracy when it comes to Sega and Atlas. And we do now have some other stuff that she's going to be talking about here with Kingdom Hearts and the next Nintendo system. And this to me is fascinating, but it also ties into what Square Enix has said or what they're going to be doing with their new 3-year business plan, which we did detail on the channel here. So according to Midori, all Kingdom Hearts games. Now, this was her exact tweet, and the entire series and Kingdom Hearts 4 might come to the next Nintendo hardware. So she's saying that, hey, look, she's hearing some things that it will be coming to the next Nintendo hardware. Might. She doesn't say it's a definitive thing, but it seems like Square Enix is evaluating, probably getting porting resources, allocating budgets, looking to where it's going to fit in when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2. And this is a smart move. Square Enix, if you're smart about this, Kingdom Hearts and Nintendo goes hand in hand. You're missing out on millions of dollars, in my opinion, having this type of brand, Kingdom Hearts, on the platform. Now, they did have the cloud versions of the game on the Nintendo Switch, but we all know not everybody can support cloud type of play. You need really good internet, and the Nintendo Switch just isn't a platform that does cloud play great. The technology behind it is not great for that. The Xbox has that, and PC and some of the other things, but it's not great on Nintendo Switch. Heck, it's not great really anywhere for the most part, unless you have specific conditions in order to make the cloud gaming work well. So I think that with this next system, you got to start fresh, you got to start new, you got to have some good big games, and I think that Kingdom Hearts having that whole collection that people went crazy for, that's going on Steam, right? All the Kingdom Hearts fans are really happy about that because it's off the Epic Game Store jail that it's in. You put that on Steam, people are excited about that, but I think Switch 2 for Kingdom Hearts 4 and all of the Kingdom Hearts games will be a smart call, and I see them absolutely doing that based off of their adjusted business plan, saying that they're going to have their big AAA games on Nintendo platforms, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. That's the right call from Square Enix. It's a good idea, and I can see exactly here what Midori's saying. I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to see a ton of Japanese developers jump onto Nintendo Switch 2 a lot faster than what they did with the standard Nintendo Switch, with the bump in horsepower, technology, and of course the backing, knowing that the Nintendo Switch brand, Nintendo's back. Whereas with the Wii U and the 3DS heading into the Switch era, things were a little bit different in terms of companies' perceptions of Nintendo. So I think it's going to be a pretty good thing happening here. Now, another thing from Midori, we've got a back-to-back from her. There is apparently going to be, or at least confirming, the Final Fantasy IX remake. That is something that we've known about for quite some time because of the NVIDIA leak, if you believe that. A lot of the things from the NVIDIA leak has happened. There was a Final Fantasy Tactics game, apparently a remaster is something that should be coming, but also Final Fantasy IX. But there was one more thing that Midori added to this, and she stated that Final Fantasy IX, yes, that is happening, but there is not a Final Fantasy X remake in development right now, which makes complete sense. They already have the HD remaster of that on multiple platforms. I think that they have a lot on their plate. If you're doing Final Fantasy Tactics and you're doing Final Fantasy IX, it seems like for quite some time, I don't think you need to really greenlight 10 at this point. I do think at some point 10 should be remade, considering the groundbreaking landmark game that Final Fantasy X is. So I do think in the future, Final Fantasy X would be a good candidate for a nice high-end remake. And I think that it should be more of a faithful remake and not a Final Fantasy VII remake type of thing. But I think for right now, Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy Tactics should be the focus. But Square Enix is still readjusting their divisions and their business plans. So once they actually get that situated and settled down, and the next 3 years like they talked about, I think that we will start seeing some of those plans for Final Fantasy Tactics, for Final Fantasy IX, and what they plan to do with the third in the trilogy of Final Fantasy VII remakes, and then of course Final Fantasy XVII, what they have for Final Fantasy XIV, the new expansions and all that, plus their other IPs like Dragon Quest, Nier, which there seems to be a new game, and other big titles. So we'll see what happens going forward there. But before we get into anything else, please, if you're enjoying this show, hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And check out my most recent video. I'll have a link for you guys if you haven't seen it. It was a big video on top 25 JRPGs, so link in the description for that. But let's move on to the next thing here, boys and girls. We're going to be talking about the weird in Nintendo for the past week. I call it Nintendo Weirdo. I don't know, we'll have some type of segment when it comes down to it. So this is really weird. So Kirby Air Ride, you guys remember that game from Masahiro Sakurai, HAL, right? Kirby on a star riding around. You can ride with your friends. There's a single player mode. People love that game. That needs to get remastered as well. Well, apparently Sakurai actually removed higher quality Dolby Pro Logic 2 audio from it because he didn't want people to have to wait for the splash screen, because that splash screen takes like a couple seconds. And Masahiro Sakurai was like, no, I don't want that splash screen on there, because it's going to be a couple seconds, and then every time that you boot it up, it's going to add up, and then all of a sudden, it's going to be thousands of seconds of wasted time in order for you to get into your game. So it's pretty crazy in terms of what he had to say. Sakurai actually said this: I feel very sorry for making the user wait. If you take 1 second from each user, that means you'll be taking 10,000s of seconds from 10,000 people. the more this repeats over the years, the more time you will cause players to lose. So Sakurai pulled the ultimate gamer move here, or at least get to the game move here, and said, nope, you guys don't get higher quality audio because I don't want to make you wait for something because it's an extra screen. So I don't know. There's been mixed reactions on this. Yes, people like the higher quality audio. I always love the higher quality audio. If you can do Dolby Pro Logic 2, I remember getting my first speaker Logitech set and setting it up with my GameCube and my PS2 and my Xbox and playing Metroid Prime and some of these other 6th generation games with surround sound. It was actually pretty cool. I have to admit, it was a really cool thing. Now, when I played Kirby Air Ride, I wasn't really looking for Dolby Pro Logic. I mean, it's a weird spin-off racing game, but I still think that, yeah, like I get what he was thinking, but it would have been nice to have it in. I think fans would have forgave him if you have higher quality audio. They would have waited for that splash screen. I mean, gamers can be pretty patient when it comes to certain things, so I think that it probably would have been worth it to just leave it in there. But that's my own personal opinion. He's thinking from a gamer's perspective. There are some people who agree with him. There's a lot of people who agree with him and say, yeah, I don't care about Dolby Pro Logic 2, especially back then. I mean, not at this point, a lot of people have it, but back then, not as many people probably had a surround sound setup. When it comes to GameCube, you just played stuff off of your TV speakers in 480p. So, I mean, I get it from that perspective at that time. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different. Higher quality audio now, there's different things, but even not at this point, Nintendo still does like uncompressed HDMI for surround sound. Like, they don't have like the licensed stuff in there. So I don't know, it is what it is on that one. So very weird story, but interesting story nonetheless. Now Sakurai is probably working on the next Super Smash Brothers game, so I want to see some high quality audio there. I think we'll be okay with that one when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2. But moving on to the next topic here, guys, let's get into some Nintendo stocks are rising. What's happening with Nintendo? We just alluded to this with Square Enix, Kingdom Hearts, and all that. Well, there was a chain effect when it comes to Square Enix announcing that they're going to be making games for Nintendo platforms and AAA games be it that, which they did have AAA games on the Nintendo Switch, but they were often years late or not at all, or cloud versions. There was always some type of weird stipulation with Nintendo and their games with Square Enix if it was a big AAA type of game. Well, it seems like that's changing. Nintendo stock apparently this past week rose for 4 straight days because of the announcement that Square Enix will be developing AAA games for their platform. And it makes sense, right? Like Nintendo, big Japanese company, Square Enix, one of the biggest Japanese third-party companies out there. And you're starting to say, hey, we're going to be developing for Nintendo platforms. Nintendo Switch 2 Mania is going to start up pretty soon here. Clearly, it didn't just say Nintendo Switch, it said Nintendo platform. So that does mean the future platforms, because they're not talking about the Nintendo 3DS or the Wii U. So it makes complete sense here. I think that this is the right call, right? People are going to say, okay, they're going to start putting 2 and 2 together. That Square Enix and Nintendo can make a ton of money together. They did it on the Nintendo Switch. A lot of games were successful for them. Dragon Quest XI-S, all of the classic Final Fantasy games out there. So absolutely, I see why the stocks rose, because out of all of the companies here, the most to gain when it comes to what they didn't have to what now they will potentially get is Nintendo. That's the most to gain, because remember, Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy 15, the main game, Final Fantasy 14, like a lot of these big Final Fantasy games that have been big money makers over the years are not on Nintendo platforms, and now you might get those in addition to new games as well. That opens up a whole new avenue that was already available for most Xbox and PlayStation gamers, with the exception of some of the most recent Final Fantasy games. But now you're opening that to probably a bigger audience, or what will be a bigger audience, and an audience in Japan as well that's dominated by the Nintendo Switch at this point and Nintendo software, whether it's first or third party. So it makes complete sense that Nintendo's stock has been rising 4 days straight, and I'm guessing that once we actually start getting some announcements here, that it's going to continue going up. I think I see a good partnership between Nintendo and Square Enix going forward, because they're going to make a lot of money on the Nintendo Switch too. So we're going to move on to the next topic here, guys. Let's talk about some JRPG news. We have Vanillaware. You guys all know and love them. 13 Sentinels, Dragons, Crown, the most recent Unicorn Overlord. Beautiful art style, hand drawn. Everything is just so nice. Well, guess what, guys? They are hiring. They are getting ready for their next game. They are hiring. My man Stealth had the beat on this one, saying Vanillaware has announced they are hiring for a new fantasy action RPG. They are hiring programmers, animators, and designers. So yeah, this is definitely good to hear. Looks like Unicorn Overlord was a success based off of this, because usually when something isn't going well, what you hear about is layoffs. We've seen it all throughout this year. It's been nuts. Last year, even the year before, layoffs have been a big problem in the industry, especially after a game releases and it doesn't hit sales expectations. And even skip layoffs, man, we've had complete closures of studios when companies say, hey, like, oh yeah, I hit all metrics and everything like that. Well, I guess it didn't, because Microsoft shut Tango down, even though it apparently hit all metrics and all things that they were looking for. Arcane Austin, we've seen so many layoffs and things happen in this industry. So to hear that, hey, they're hiring people, that things seem to be going well. They sold over 500,000 copies of Unicorn Overlord. We know based off of the MPD sales for that month that it was tracked, that it was number 2 on the Nintendo Switch board, and it was in the top 10 for the MPD sales, and it did not make Xbox or PlayStation's boards. That means most of the sales were on the Nintendo Switch, and there is no PC version of the game. So they've got to say this, man, it was a good idea, because originally Unicorn Overlord was simply a PS Vita and PS4 game when it first started development a number of years ago, and they said, wait a minute, hold up here, look at the landscape of what's going on, look at Japan, look at what people are playing, the Nintendo Switch is blowing up, we've got to put this multi-platform, otherwise we could be in trouble when it finally releases. So they changed it over to PS5, PS4, Xbox, and the Nintendo Switch, and it was a good idea. A lot of sales here. 500,000 units might be bad for the highest end games. Obviously, the big AAA games need way more than that. But for a game like Unicorn Overlord, that is absolutely good sales and positive for them. And I think once more sales hit and Black Friday and later in the year, this game is going to be over 1 million units sold, just like 13 Sentinels and a lot of their other titles. But I think this game could get to 1 million units sold a lot faster than their previous ones, because it took years for 13 Sentinels to hit the 1 million mark, and it needed the Nintendo Switch too. So this one has it from the beginning, and it looks like it's already off to a very good start. And I can't wait to see what it's going to be. It's probably going to be a while, because the games do take quite a bit of time because of the hand-drawn art, because of the complex systems and mechanics. But once we do see it, I think it's going to be spectacular. All right, and moving on to the next topic here, guys, we are going to get into the Nintendo Switch officially passing the Nintendo DS to become the best-selling system ever in Japan. Now, I thought that I already reported on this, because there were some reports that it did, but I think the reports were saying that it's going to any minute now, or any day now, or whatever the case is. So that day's down at this point, right? So Nintendo Switch has surpassed the DS best-selling system of all time in Japan, which is wild to me. I mean, the DS is a legendary system, obviously the second best-selling system of all time overall, and the Nintendo Switch has passed it up in record timing in its 7th year, going on its 8th year. Right now, the Nintendo Switch is sitting at 32,903,701 units. The Nintendo DS is at 32,864,129 units. So it's passed it up, and it's still going. It's still building its lead. The past week for the Famitsu sales in Japan, the Switch sold another 40,000 units, being the top selling system, and had 9 out of 10 of the top 10 software as well with Nintendo's evergreen games. So yeah, the Switch is still killing it, doing okay in Japan compared to the other platforms. Now, the one thing here is it going to be able to pass the PS2? Now, it seems like it's going to be able to pass the Nintendo DS by next year around March, if Nintendo hits their forecast that they're looking for, 13 million plus units or so. Then yes, it should be able to pass up the Nintendo DS, or be right about there, because they are at 141.32 million units as of March 31st. So they don't need too much more to pass that up. Once again, if they hit their forecast, they should hit the Nintendo DS numbers and pass them up. And then based on the official numbers and then the Jim Ryan numbers, you have the PS2 at anywhere between 155 million officially on their books to 160 million based off of what Jim Ryan had to say on his way out of PlayStation. So I think regardless of where you put it at, if Nintendo keeps on supporting it, which I think they will with new virtual console NSO games, maybe some smaller games here and there, a Nintendo Switch Sports 2 dual release on Switch 2 and the standard Switch, I think eventually by 2026, 2027, the Nintendo Switch will pass up the 155 to 160 million to become the best-selling system of all time. So we're gonna have to wait on that, but once again, they're doing this in record timing, so it's crazy to see, but nobody could have guessed this at all. I guessed that, yeah, the Nintendo Switch could be 100+ million selling because they're combining their home console and portable, but nobody had it being in the PS2/DS range. At least not many people had it there. So definitely good for Nintendo on that front. And it supplied us with tons of games when it comes to the investments from companies. So it's a good thing. If they sell good, we're going to get more because we got a lot more than what we got on the Nintendo Wii U, that's for sure. Now, let's move on to the final topic here. We're going to be talking about Stellar Blade and what's happening there. Some more RPG news for you guys. So Stellar Blade is getting a boss challenge and a mode update on May 24th. So many of you guys should already have access to this. So the boss challenge, this is going to pitch you against the 19 bosses from the base game to hone your skills and of course outwit your enemies by brutalizing them to a pulp. Your progression in the boss challenge requires battle data from bosses you've previously defeated. You can also fight bosses on the hard difficulty setting after you've seen the ending of the game, because a harder difficulty does open up after that with a new game plus mode. To start a challenge, you can either load it up and use your own gear you've been using, or choose from several presets like they had in the demo, which is awesome as well. There's maximum presets, there's all sorts of different stuff. You can go for true challenges, there's all sorts of things that you can do, and all of your data is analyzed after you beat it. Key metrics like battle time, number of perfect parries, dodges, consumables usage, and more. You can test your skills and compare those with your friends. Now, if you defeat all the bosses in the boss challenge on normal difficulty setting or higher, you'll get to earn the Neuralink suit for Eve. Hats off to your strength, boys and girls. There's also new nano suits being added in, which is awesome. Blood, Blade, and Beauty. Eve can now be summarized with these 3 words. New nano suits have been added to bring out her beauty even more. The 2 nano suits are the white Kunoichi and the black Kunoichi, which will be available in the new update. Nice quality of life feature as well. If you switch to a ranged attack mode and switch back while locked onto an enemy, you will automatically lock on to that enemy. Also, they're adding the option to always show the compass in the HUD, which was silly that was never a thing. I talked about this to one of my friends on Twitter. I was like, why do you have to do the scan and you have to update it for it to last longer? It should just be up there because of the way that the map works, and even how some places don't even have a map for you to use. So some areas you just can't swipe the touchpad and access the map. So having a HUD on there at all times if you want it, or at least a toggle, should have been the move from the very beginning, but they actually tied it into a drone upgrade, which was just bizarre. But I kind of understand, hey, they're trying to get you a bit more immersed into the experience. You hit the drone upgrade, it scans for longer, it's like the Neuralink and all that type of stuff because of who Eve is. So I get that, but I think that, yeah, they probably should have left it up there because it's a little bit of a pain point for people trying to track down all their side quests and go to certain places, and you're in some of the open-ended areas. But yeah, it's cool that they actually added that. Good quality of life updates, good updates when it comes to a brand new mode for free out there. I'm playing through Stellar Blade. I'm almost done with the game. I know I'm on the last part. I'm really enjoying it. I think that it's a phenomenal game. I think it's my favorite PlayStation 5 game for the year so far. It's right up there in my game of the year for the first half of the year. I think that Stellar Blade is right there, if not my game of the year. I really enjoy it. I like it more than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think that this game does a lot of great things with the combat. Yes, the story's a little weak here and there, but I think that the lore behind it is actually pretty cool, and I find the world to be very interesting. And if they make a sequel to this, watch out, because that could be something really spectacular when it comes to story and gameplay marred together. But yeah, Stellar Blade's awesome. go out there and pick it up. I mean, it's still full price right now, but maybe there'll be some discounts by Black Friday or not. But it is a beefy game. I think I'm 30 plus hours in and still going, and we're getting new content being added in as well. So it's definitely good for gamers out there and PS5 fans that are enjoying Stellar Blade. So what do you guys think about this week in Nintendo, the show here this week in RPGs? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. And of course, let me know what your favorite topic was for this video in the comment section below. I will be reading through the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch and RPG videos right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.